Welcome to the FourthSquare Solutions Podcast. At FourthSquare, we're driving business transformation through technology and innovation. We focus on delivering enterprise-wide solutions beyond IT for the public and commercial sectors. What can we solve for you today?
Hey, and welcome to this episode of the FourthSquare Solutions Podcast. We're going to change things up on this episode. I'm actually going to be talking with our producer, Jim Ray. Jim, welcome.
Kerry, good to be working with you, buddy. I like this format. We're going to change it up a little bit, like you said, and I think we're going to shift the roles. I'm going to actually ask you questions today, so it'll be a little bit different for our listener.
Absolutely. So today's topic, I want to focus on the buying process, specifically in public sector. And what I'm hoping for the listeners to gain is to better understand the buying process in your procurement process when you are trying to procure enterprise software solutions, such as ERP, HCM, supply chain, etc. So I want to give you some perspective from a vendor and what that looks like. So hopefully that makes sense. And Jim, welcome again.
Buddy, I appreciate it. So, Kerry, let's do this. More often than not, when you get into a software acquisition phase, there's going to be an RFP, and you're going to issue that out. Your qualified vendors are going to basically answer that RFP. Are they really necessary? Are they required? Do they actually add value to the process?
Yeah. So, an RFP, sometimes yes, sometimes no, they're required. I think as a vendor and a lot of times, even as an agency, they're looking, how can we avoid this RFP process? And it's not to be sneaky. It's not to try and buy something, that wasn't approved. It's because the RFP process is extremely expensive. When you talk to government agencies, a typical RFP, just to prepare it and release it and to go through that process, it's $10,000 to $15,000. That's just on the agency side. And then as a vendor, when we look at responding to an RFP, on our side, it's anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 just to respond. And I'm sure some people are thinking, why so much? Well, you just look at the time that it takes to respond to an RFP. You look at the time to prepare an RFP. There's a lot of time and a lot of labor involved in that. So when is an RFP required? When is it not? From my perspective, it's not really required. If there's a contract vehicle that you can leverage, such as NASPO, there's a lot of contract vehicles out there that procurement rules allow you to buy off of these contracts without having to go through an RFP, because these contracts, the pricing, the terms, they're already pre-negotiated. So that is, one area where, you can avoid an RFP. The other area is if you can sole source, if you can prove that, hey, there's really just one vendor that can do this and that can meet our requirements. The most procurement rules allow you to avoid an RFP process and just, negotiate in good faith, with a specific vendor. So any time that you can avoid an RFP, that process, I think it's mutually beneficial. Now, what an RFP does, and with all of that being said, what an RFP does is it provides a lot of transparency. And a lot of procurement directors, they feel really uneasy about buying without an RFP process, because, so many audits have been done over the years, and, these agencies, they find themselves in the newspaper where there's potential collusion with a vendor or a contractor. So, an RFP does ensure that full transparency. And I totally get that.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, it's a complicated process. You and I have both been in sales for many, many years in various capacities. I also did government sales for a while. Let me ask you this. Given the depth and the complexity of an RFP process, Should an agency actually handle or hire a consultant to help with this process from start to finish? Would that be beneficial?
I 100% say yes. An agency needs, especially if they're buying an enterprise solution or a large complex, solution. I don't care if it's, a fire truck or, especially in software, in technology, I 100% recommend that they hire a consultant to help them on their side to prep and prepare that RFP, to go through their analysis and do gap analysis, see where they're short, see where they need help, see where they can transform their business, with the technology, see where their technology gaps are. And then you can build your RFP around that. This is a very, very complicated process. And when you're buying an enterprise solution, this is, this is a very mission critical decision, that you're making, and you cannot get it wrong. Failure is not an option. And for you to try and go this alone is, in my opinion, it's a fool's errand. So there are plenty of consultants out there. I would recommend finding a consultant that is 100% focused. If you're a public sector agency, 100% focused, just working with public sector agencies, and leaning on them and their expertise to make sure that you get this process right. I've seen too many RFPs go out the door, and they get their responses, and I literally have the agency send me a note and they say, Kerry, why did your organization not respond? And I share and I give them honest feedback. And what happens is that they have to cancel that RFP because they maybe only got one or two responses. And out of those responses, they didn't like what they saw, or they don't like what they see. So they have to reissue the RFP. It throws them way behind, and it costs them extra money, all because the RFP was not well written. So that's why I recommend hiring a consultant, what I call a client side consultant, to help you write and prepare that RFP.
No, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. It allows them to consider other things that maybe they weren't thinking about when they were drafting it, making sure, okay, do we have this right clause in here? Do we have this right requirement? But there's always other things, and having more eyes on the process sometimes can actually speed it up rather than slow it down once it gets issued. Speaking of once it gets issued, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. So the agency has now tendered the RFP, they've sent everything out, and they're starting to get responses in. Now what? What's kind of a best practice at that point?
Yeah. So what I recommend doing when in the RFP is, when you ask for responses, make sure that the pricing is included in a separate. If it's a manual submission, paper submission, make sure that the pricing is submitted in a different envelope. And so whoever's scoring the proposals, they don't see the pricing. And the reason why you want to make sure, first and foremost, that you're scoring the proposals based on features and functionality and resources that best meet your organization, separate of price. Okay? Because there are vendors out there that are gonna come in. I don't care what industry or what business you're trying to buy for. There's always the low cost provider, and they're low cost for a reason. And there's going to be a high cost provider, but somewhere in between, you're going to find a good, happy, place that makes sense for your organization. Let your buying committee make a decision. Okay. Make their first decision, their first scoring based on what best meets our needs. And even through the demo, I recommend not revealing the pricing till after you see demos, after you see the product. Then open up the pricing and let them rescore based on the pricing. Now you have a good weighted score that, okay, here's the value that we're getting for the price. That's what I recommend, that how you go about that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, you kind of brought up the next question about demonstrations. So you've got your short list, you've got your group, your final group that you want to invite to the next round, and in this case, it's demonstrations. So what is really the point of the demonstration? What should the agency be doing? And then also, what should they be looking for in terms of that vendor? What do they need that vendor to be able to do during that demonstration that not only adds value to the process, but also furthers along the decision-making process?
Yeah. So when it comes to demonstrations, I recommend that you give the vendors, whoever you choose, give them at least 30 days notice to do demonstrations. And the reason is because when it comes to enterprise software solutions, you may have up to 10 people just from the vendor side that you need to coordinate to be at that demonstration to demonstrate the product. So you've got to align all of those resources, and you need at least 30 days, sometimes more. Okay. And have some alternate dates for the vendors to be able to say, hey, I can't get all of my resources there, so, on these particular dates. Do you have some alternate dates? So that's the first thing. Give the vendor plenty of time to prepare for the demo. The second thing is give them some very detailed demo scripts and let them know exactly what you want to see. I've seen agencies throw it back on the vendor and say, hey, just show, what you feel like you need to show to sell us your product. Well, I come back and say, listen, you're the ones that have the need. You're the ones that are inviting your audience. You need to tell us what you want to see so we can tailor the demonstration to your audience. Too many times we've gone in without a demo script, and somebody in finance, if we're demoing finance, they'll say, why are they showing us that? That's not how we do it. And that's not good. That's not a good experience for your agency to go through that. So make sure that they.
Yeah. At the same time, I would think it would be very difficult when you're not seeing apples to apples comparisons to really be able, from the agency standpoint, to evaluate vendor A, vendor B, and then the rest of them. So yeah, I mean, that vendor script seems to put everybody on the same sheet of music.
You're exactly right. And to score those demonstrations fairly, they all need to be showing, reading from the same playbook and demonstrating the same features and functionality. You're exactly right. And then the last thing is, make sure that you allot the proper amount of time for the vendor to demo. So in work with the vendor on that, saying, hey, we have a full day, do you need more time? Okay. And typically, all the vendors are going to come back, if you certainly have not provided enough time, more often than not, all the vendors are going to come back and say, hey, we need more time. I have seen where agencies want to see a full, ERP demo in 2 hours. Well, guess what? It's going to take us 2 hours just to demo, finance. And, and we haven't even gotten to planning and budgeting. We haven't even gotten to procurement. We haven't even gotten to asset management. So, and that comes back, Jim, to the hiring a consultant. A consultant is going to help, lead you in that entire process, and getting you to understand. So
Well, I think
again,
anytime there's a good demo, I mean, anytime there's a good demo, there's going to be questions, right? During that, in that exercise. And if you haven't allotted ample time, your questions as an agent or as an agency aren't going to get addressed. And the vendor's going to feel like, wow, we had all this other stuff. We just didn't get a chance to show you.
Exactly. So to kind of recap, please give the vendor plenty of notice for the demo. Please give them detailed scripts and a detailed agenda, and give them plenty of time to demo what they need to demo. Yep.
That makes sense. So, Kerry, you've done this for many years. I mean, you've got a lot of experience having been through this process, having been through various processes that are similar, but different industries do it differently. From your perspective, from your experience, what would you like to see different, or how could this process be managed differently? Really, from your vendor's standpoint, how do you think the process could be improved just overall? I guess maybe from the macro.
Yeah, there's some rooms for improvement in the areas of. So when we receive an RFP, we receive what we call a functionality matrix. They want to know everything that that the software can do, and I get that, but sometimes these matrices can be 4,000 and 5,000 lines in a spreadsheet long, and think about how long it takes for our team to go through and answer, yes, it will do that. Yes, it's standard. No, it won't do that, but it's in a future release. And then they want commentary, a paragraph or two on how it meets that particular requirement. Some of these functional matrices, they have requirements in there that are very, very basic. Will the do you have a sign-on button? Do you have a login button? Yes, we have a login button. Okay, that's very basic. So let's leave some of the basics that we can all safely assume. Okay, and I know we're not supposed to assume, but in a lot of cases we can safely assume, hey, the software is going to do that. All right. Let's take that line out. I think a lot of these functional requirements, Jim, are from years and years ago, when enterprise software was just hitting the street and becoming, was a new thing out there. So I think they can certainly, improve that.
I think so much of this has a tendency to be boilerplate. And when that happens, you start copying and pasting clauses or requirements that may not be germane to this specific situation. And now you're both going, well, why did you want to know that? We don't even know why we asked the question. It was just part of the form. And then everybody's running around chasing their tails for something that's not really going to add value to the overall end objective for the agency, I guess.
Yeah. The other big thing that I would highly recommend is that please, subscribe, purchase, get involved, get yourself some type of a contract vendor portal like OpenGov. There's a number of them out there. There's public purchase where you can manage all of the documents and all of the submissions electronically. When I see an RFP come through and it says manual and paper submission, I need one original and I need 6 hard copies. And then I need, and you got to understand, these proposal submissions, they're at least 100 pages, long.
Yep.
So imagine our team that has to put that together, and then we have to ship it. I've shipped, some proposals, and just the shipping cost alone has been close to $500, because, inevitably we as vendors, we work and we tailor and we want to get it right. And we take it up to the 11th hour, and then we have to overnight it, and we have to guarantee, that you receive it, that the agency receives it. So we pay extra for that. So I highly encourage, let's move to electronic submissions and let's get away from the manual and paper submissions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there are just antiquated ways of doing it. Sometimes there are specific reasons why this is done a certain way, but a lot of times the answer is, well, that's just how we've always done it, and that's not really always the best answer.
Right.
At least not now, with technology being what it is.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Kerry, I tell you what, this hasn't been a very long episode, and it really wasn't meant to be. This was supposed to be kind of a just a candid conversation about how agencies can really manage this process, and maybe we've been able to kind of pique their interest in a couple of different things to consider. It's not all the answers. Some of it may not be earth shattering, and some of it may be, well, our agency has specific requirements. That's why we have to do certain things. But maybe you've kind of got the wheels turning there a little bit to where people can go, you know what? Let's go out and look at that procurement software that you referenced in the final answer there. Or, hey, does this really need to be done in such a quick schedule, or can we open that up? And would we actually have better information if we allowed the vendor a little bit more time to fully, give us a quality demonstration with Q&A and with, layers and layers in there that, yeah, sometimes that gets a little mundane, but I would rather know that up front than to get on down the road and realize, oh, we should have asked that question. Well, now you're kind of married to the product because you've already selected the winner or the vendor that you're going to go with. And sometimes it gets a little rough for both parties when stuff like that happens. But Kerry, do you have any closing thoughts on this?
Yeah, the only closing thought, Jim, I would say is if you are looking to procure, software, I encourage you before the RFP process, even takes place. If you're like, hey, we've got to go out to an RFP, there's no way around it. That's great. But I would highly recommend that you engage some vendors prior to the RFP, and this is perfectly fine. There's no rules against it. Engage with them. Have them come in and do what I call pre-RFP demos. These are just very high-level flyover demos just so you can get a taste and flavor of what's out there in the marketplace. And then ask the vendors. They'll be more than happy to do it. We love when we get involved, in early before the RFP. Get a budget, okay? Have them give you a budgetary estimate on what it's going to cost. So you have clear expectations and understanding of what it's going to cost. That would be a big thing. And then the other thing that I would say, I brought up the idea of the budget. Don't hide the budget. Even, when the RFP is released and they have the Q&A session, they invite all the prospective vendors who are interested in the RFP. There's always a vendor meeting, what they call a pre-bid meeting. And everybody there's always, do you have a budget for this? And they're like, yeah, but we're not going to share it. I encourage the agency to share what that budget number is. Now I know the audience is like, oh yeah, Kerry, you as a vendor, you want to know what the budget is. All right. So where you want your price to come in. No, that's not the case at all. All right. Because if I'm a vendor and I know that what I know, let's say that my fees are going to be $1 million. Okay. And your agency, it's your agency from a demographic standpoint, it's ideally suited for what we do. All right. But maybe your agency has only budgeted $500,000. Listen, if that's all you have in budget, I don't want to waste your time. We certainly don't want to waste our time. Let's make the decision right now saying, hey, they simply don't have the budget for the solution that we have. And a lot of time is saved on both sides. So it's not a matter of hey, ooh, man, they've got $1 million budgeted for this. Yeah, we can really, add some fat to our, and some margin to our proposal. No, That's not it at all. We want to know from a budget standpoint, are we going to be a good fit? Are we going to be wasting our time? And more importantly, wasting the agency's time, So, so those are my final thoughts. That's what I would encourage, agencies to do.
Well, and just to build off your point there, if I think, okay, there's the budget, I still have to compete against the other vendors who are participating in this. Just because I know the number doesn't mean that's going to be the ultimate number. I mean, it may actually be lower. If I think this is a competitively bid project, I still have to sharpen my pencil as a vendor and to make sure I give the most value in terms of not only what we can do, but also what the price of that capability is going to be. So I'm still competing. So it's not a matter of, well, I hit the number, so I should get the project. No, this is a competitively bid, contract. So, there's that part of it, which actually kind of protects the agency.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. But anyway, so you thought this was going to be a short episode, but we came up with some additional, nuggets of gold here. At least I hope they're nuggets of gold for the audience, Jim. And I really appreciate, you taking the time to engage with me on this conversation, today. And I also want to thank the audience for attending. I hope this has been an informative conversation. If you want to learn more, about what we do here at FourthSquare, you can visit us at our website at FourthSquare.com. We're out there on social media, on LinkedIn, and you can always visit us, on other social media platforms such as X and Instagram. So with that, and until next time, I hope to see you again, and always be asking yourself, how can you transform your business through technology and innovation?
Thanks a lot, Kerry. See you next time.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the FourthSquare Solutions Podcast. We hope you found it insightful. Visit FourthSquare.com to learn more about our team and capabilities. While you're there, search our knowledge base to find articles, white papers, and case studies. You can also listen to additional episodes and read our In the Square newsletter. Until next time, what can FourthSquare solve for you?